The warm autumn sun bathed our peaceful neighborhood in golden light as my daughter Eliana sat quietly on the porch with her service dog, Jasper, curled up at her feet. At just 16, Eliana had already survived more than most adults. Spinal cord injury from a childhood accident had left her wheelchair-bound, but her spirit never dimmed. Despite her physical limitations, she was a Stratus student, gentle, kind, and known for her infectious laugh. That was until Karen moved in 3 houses down. Karen was the type of woman who weaponized authority without ever actually possessing any. Short, blonde, and always with a clipboard in hand. She took her self-appointed role as enforcer of the HOA rules far beyond the limits of sanity. She nitpicked lawns, measured mailbox heights, and even once tried to fine a neighbor for hanging a flag on the wrong day. But her fixation on my daughter was different. It was obsessive, cruel, entirely unprovoked. It began with passive-aggressive notes about our wheelchair ramp. She claimed it ruined the aesthetic of the neighborhood, even though it was approved by city code and required by law. Then she escalated, snapping photos of Eliana's therapy van parked slightly over the curb during her physiotherapy sessions and accusing us of violating parking rules. I ignored her antics until the morning the police showed up. "Is this the residence of Eliana Morrow?" the officer asked, glancing at a clipboard. "Yes," I replied, stepping onto the porch. "I'm her father. What's this about?" The officer's expression was uneasy. "There's been a formal complaint filed with both the HOA and the City Council. An individual claims that your daughter has been harassing her and vandalizing her property." I blinked in stunned silence. Eliana, who was inside reading a book, had never even spoken to Karen. "That's impossible," I said. "She hasn't left our yard in a week, and she can't even access Karen's steep driveway." But the officer was obligated to follow protocol. "We'll have to file an incident report and may need to review security footage," he said. Later that evening, I received an official notice from the HOA. The language was severe, citing unlawful destruction of property, verbal threats, and the most outrageous claim of all, repeated intimidation by a minor with malicious intent. Karen had sent in security footage, which I obtained through legal channels. I nearly laughed when I watched it. The grainy video showed a shadowy figure walking near her fence in the dark. No face, no wheelchair, no defining features, just a person in a hoodie. That was her evidence. I was still debating how to respond. When Karen herself marched up to our porch 2 days later, camera phone in hand and a deputy behind her, "I'm pressing charges," she said with a smirk, pointing a freshly manicured nail at Eliana. "Your daughter's reign of terror ends." Today, Eliana began to cry. "I didn't do anything," she whispered. "That was the last straw, deputy." I said calmly, "I suggest you halt this nonsense right now." Karen's eyes sparkled with smugness. "Oh, let me guess, you think you're above the law?" I stepped down to meet her eye to eye. "No, ma'am. I am the law, Judge Marcus Morrow. 14th Circuit Court, Superior Bench. Perhaps you've heard of me?" Karen's expression shifted from delight to disbelief, then horror. The deputy looked. "Between us awkwardly, sir? Are you serious?" I reached into my coat and pulled out my credentials, flashing the official badge. "Dead serious." Karen's phone wobbled in her hand. "You just falsely accused a minor with a disability of a felony," said my voice low but firm. "You attempted to use the legal system to harass my daughter based on falsified evidence. That is perjury, obstruction, and possibly a hate crime." She stammered. I didn't mean, "Oh, but you did," I said. "And you filed a report suggesting she should be sentenced to 10 years under the city's habitual vandalism and gang activity statutes. For what? A figure in a hoodie on bad camera footage." The deputy, now fully realizing the gravity, stepped back. "Judge, I had no idea you were just doing your job," I told him. But Karen here wasn't. She weaponized law enforcement for her personal vendetta. That ends now. Karen tried to backtrack, waving her hands in the air. "This is all a misunderstanding?" I turned toward Eliana, who had been wheeling herself quietly back into the house. "Eliana, sweetheart, go inside. Daddy has some paperwork to draft." That evening, I filed a formal motion with the court citing abuse of process. I also submitted a complaint with the Department of Fair Housing and the ADA, but that wasn't. Ali brought the matter before the city council and requested a special hearing regarding Karen's continued role in the HOA. The courtroom was packed 2 weeks later. Karen showed up in pearls and tears, pretending to be the victim, but her lies quickly unraveled. I presented every note, every video, every complaint she filed. I played the surveillance footage next to a time-stamped video from our own porch camera showed Eliana asleep inside when the alleged crime occurred. The room was silent. When I concluded, I said, "This is not just about my daughter. This is about what happens when people with petty authority believe they can harass the vulnerable without consequences." The judge, a colleague of mine, issued a sharp ruling. Karen Winslow, you are fined for malicious prosecution and harassment. You are permanently banned from any HOA leadership role. I recommend the city attorney review this case for potential criminal charges. Karen burst into tears. Outside the courthouse, several neighbors waited for us. "We're so sorry." Judge Morrow once said, "Didn't know it had gotten that bad." "We're calling for a full HOA board re-election," another added. "You've got our support." Eliana, overwhelmed but smiling, squeezed my hand. That night, we sat on the porch again just like before under the soft glow of the street lamp. Jasper barked happily at a squirrel, and for the first time in months, Eliana laughed freely. Justice wasn't just served, it was personal. And Karen finally learned what happens when you try to use power to destroy the innocent, especially when the innocent has a judge for a father